Good day, everyone. Welcome again to my YouTube channel. This episode is the 22nd installment in my program, Social Change: How and When Will It Come True? This will continue our discussion of the concept of justice, which, as we have noted, is among the most essential components of human transformation for social change to take place in world societies. Dr. Jose Rizal, in his famous novel El Filibusterismo, is proven to be right in his having expressed in unequivocal terms his concern about the injustices and abuses taking place in today's Philippine society, when he said more than a century ago, "Why independence and freedom if the slaves of today will be the tyrants of tomorrow?" Any continuance of these phenomena is clearly unjustifiable, more so particularly towards the threshold of the super techno-societies. Rizal had boldly stated, "All men were born without shackles and free, and nobody has the right to subjugate the will and spirit of another." God, as Rizal pointed out, did not create man to be a slave. Were the reverse God's idea, there would have been no point in his endowing the born slaves with intelligence, if with it they would only have to get hoodwinked by the born tyrants. Rizal, in ruminating into the conditions of his day, had held on to the truism of reason as not being a mere ornamentation in inferior man, which there is to be none, only to be deceived by the superior man, which there should not be possible. Our own view of conditions in our time and of those and that following is a reaffirmation of the omniscience and omnipotence of the living moral God, being all good and all just. In his infinite wisdom, he established the natural laws of the universe to be observed by all men. As Dr. Joshua Luz Leibman, in his best-selling book Peace of Mind, warns us, God expects these natural laws, to operate. If you abuse them, he will not set his world topsy-turvy in order to rescue you from the consequences of your deeds. It is in the very nature of reason endowed to man from the infinite wisdom of the living God to have equipped man with his noblest faculty, that of understanding the difference between what is right and what is wrong. The explanation is that God is not a dictator. Neither can he be a magician who changes things at will. Hence the conclusion that God's unchanging concept, long established, remains prevalent. What then inherently holds on for every human person is his need to interrelate himself or herself coexistentially with others in the society. Such interrelationship has to be as much fairly and reasonably equal to, or congenial and jovial with, each or all of the rest in social order as in permissible and desirable for a decent and dignified human existence. Why don't we adopt some form of eco-societal justice as a concept in the domain of universal humanism? With that, we can do reasonably well with those with brain in the total development of the human resources. Then we can give proper understanding for those of the brawn. For truly, we need adhere to a concept that upholds in whole the doctrine of techno-societal rationale, which understands more of those who may not be able to live pleasantly because of weakness in the mind. Such a concept finds intrinsic merit in doing fairly well with those who are certain of living more abundantly by reason of the power of brain. The overall outcome will then be aggregate human resource development. In fact, It has been towards this end that most of society have clamored for total adherence to the tenets of human reason, long cherished and advocated. If at all the cause of humanism is to be served intently, alongside it must family memberships have the provisions of eco-societal justice to be so born to coexist perfectly, and none of its essentials should be made subject to callousness. The process of establishing the systems of intellectualization for technology essentially cojoins with socialization and culturalization of the aggregate human community. Though this was not what society had originally intended when education's usefulness was first discovered, but with increased population on this earth, and especially so because of the growing complexities in community life, improvements of institutional systems and innovations in social planning must be made to support the concept of education in modern society. More and more of such developments will provide the reason for necessary reforms in the educational system. Attained cultural and technological progress bear indications that among people deserving to live in the immediately succeeding world's social order, which will soon be eventually emerging, will be the housemaids and their likes becoming professionals, or even pickpockets becoming priests or pastors, whichever is the case. In the same vein, sales girls or waiters will be among those becoming entrepreneurs or business executives. The pressing urgency, of course, now is for society to understand the need of today's youth, which is a demand for social consensus that will take place into opportunities for knowing how to make or unmake tomorrow's situations out of what we do or undo today. The imperatives of such a consensus correlate with that of responsibility in role playing to open up possibilities for the employment of growing youth otherwise not having any means of support as sidelines temporarily in the non-technical jobs if there be any need of these during their early years. But let education help them, meanwhile, along the way that they advance themselves intellectually. Eventually, another set of houseboys and housemaids or store sales boys, store sales girls, or other lowly paid job holders can have such chances as were once opened to their predecessors. The ex-houseboys and ex-housemaids, ex-store sales boys or ex-store sales girls should have been grown older, having personal visions, and with the proper intellectual knowledge and physical skill by which to become gainfully employable in better paying industries. Considered to be bad is the means or process of allowing or tolerating the almost unchanging ignorance. I'm using the word ignorance here to mean inability not only to read and write, but also to adjust oneself to conditions required in a growing society of unfortunate groups. Their reverence to masterdom is abject hopelessness for their futures. This has placed them in complete servitude to a dehumanizing process carried on in a human world flowing with vibrant opportunism for all in the ways of socialization, culturalization, and intellectualization of the human population. The process has been entangling a very large proportion of the world's humankind. They are then to be made victims in occupations in which there is no chance for cultural proficiency. This, of course, to be sure, is not necessarily to let everyone be exactly the same as others in every aspect of social, economic, cultural, and political life, but that each one has to make himself or herself sufficiently and satisfactorily useful in the human community so as to be considered a rightful part thereof. Certainly, not every person is to be at the top of some organized group or an accomplisher of great things. Neither is everybody to become an officer in some institution or a lead man in an organization. But this is a fact that everyone must be a doer of something else. Social justice presupposes the act of human fair play, if not equality, in the allocation of nature's wealth. Yet a member of society faced with deprivations, social, economic, cultural, or what, of which lack of good education is the known cause, has some form of maladjustments in the society. As such, he or she can never be a fair sharer in the enjoyment of privilege to his country's goods or natural resources. Neither can he or she be a doer of anything useful to his community or contributor to nation building or an effective instrument for social change. In our next episode, that will be our 23rd installment, we shall continue discussing the very essential concept of justice as among the very essential components of human transformation for social change. If you enjoyed viewing my program, I'd like to invite you to please click the like button, and for those who have not placed their subscriptions yet, to please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Let me close this 22nd episode with this inspiring message from the Bible. Zechariah chapter 7, verses 9 to 10. I am reading from the New International Version. It says, "This is what the Lord Almighty says. Administer true justice. Show mercy and compassion to one another. Do not oppress the widow or the fatherless, the alien or the poor. In your hearts, do not think evil of each other." Thank you, my valued friends. Let's meet again in our next episode.